emulators were used in the production of this podcast.
Where did you learn to podcast? That good?
That's awesome, sweetie. Thank you. Hello and welcome to the Atari Jaguar Game by Game podcast, the show where we take a detailed look at Atari's last home video game console and its library, one game at a time. Whether you love or hate the Jaguar, or accidentally stumbled upon the show looking for a podcast about the car company or the wildcat species or something, it doesn't matter. I'm glad you're here. Stick around. I am Shinto, your track navigator for this episode, where we will get behind the wheel and power slide our way through part number 301111-0153, which isn't very catchy, so instead we'll just call it Power Drive Rally. Power Drive Rally is a 2MB cartridge, an overhead view rally racing game for 1 to 8 alternating players, developed by Rage Software and published by Time Warner Interactive in early October 1995. Rage Software was a UK developer founded in 1992 by Paul Finnegan, based out of Liverpool. Their first original title was a soccer game, or football game if you prefer, called Striker, released that same year, 92. This one was a pretty big hit across multiple platforms, computers and consoles, so it should come as no surprise that sequels and other soccer games made up almost all of Rage Software's early titles. Almost. A notable exception is Power Drive, released in, or depending on the platform, after 1993, on the Amiga, the Game Gear, Super Nintendo, Genesis and/or Mega Drive, and PC. Word is that the Genesis version in North America was exclusive to the Sega Channel, the cable TV-based content delivery system, which was active from 1994 through 1998. There was an arcade game in 1987 by Bally Midway called Power Drive, but this is totally unrelated, very different style. Development of Power Drive was moving along, but the handling of the cars in the game completely changed after the programmers visited the Forest Experience Rally School in Wales. Practical first-hand experience is good to have, I guess, when developing games. Just think how different Asteroids might have been if Lyle Rains and Ed Logg had been able to tool around in an actual spaceship. Yeah, reviews of the game were fairly mixed. For the Amiga, I see magazine ratings of 71% from the One, 49% from Amiga Format, and 61% from Amiga Magazine. Reviewers liked the size and scale of the game, 8 locations across the world with up to 6 tracks per location with different weather conditions. They liked some of the graphical details too, but criticized the controls, the sound effects, and the utter infallibility of the computer opponents. In December of 1994, Rage Software was acquired by BCE Holdings, and 2 years later changed its name to Rage Games. Rage extracted itself from the earlier merger, was acquired by sister company Swordfish Studios in 2002, and went into liquidation about a year later. Their game catalog up through 2003 includes a variety of genres in addition to more soccer and racing games. Time Warner Interactive, I've mentioned in previous episodes of this podcast, the last 2 episodes as a matter of fact, But since this is the first actual game I've covered, which was published by Time Warner, I'll include a quick rundown of the company here. And the story starts with Atari. In July of 1984, Atari spun off its coin-op division into a separate entity called Atari Games. The computer and home video game divisions were acquired by Tremel Technology, while Atari Games, and I guess Atari-Tel, the telecommunications division, those remained with Warner Communications. Mitsubishi later bought Atari-Tel, which is interesting but not really part of the story. So, this was in the midst of the great North American video game crash. Atari was losing truckloads of money, and Warner was eager to sell the company off, but they couldn't find a single buyer for everything, so they split it up, Atari Corp. And Atari Games. Tremel bought the former. My story is about the latter. Atari Games put out some excellent titles in the arcade. Gauntlet, APB, Zybots, Cyberball, Stun Runner, Hydra, Rampart, so many others, and they wanted to publish these arcade games on the home consoles at the time, but they couldn't use the Atari name there. That was owned by Tremel Technology, publishing for home consoles. That was Tremel. So they formed a subsidiary named Tengen and used this to publish console games. The name totally makes sense. It's kind of poetic. You probably know that the name Atari comes from the ancient board game Go, right? Tengen is also a term used in that game referring to the center point of the board. Pretty cool, huh? Did everybody already know this? It was new to me. So this division, Tengen, was renamed to Time Warner Interactive in 1993 and actually went back to the name Tengen in 1996 when the whole thing was sold to WMS Industries. But that time period there, 1993 through 1996, that's when the Atari Jaguar was alive and being sold at non-exorbitant eBay prices, and that's when Power Drive Rally was released, so let's focus on that, but after a bit more of the title screen music. The original Power Drive was published on many platforms, as I said, including the Super Nintendo. Around late 1993 or early 94, Rage software developer Peter Johnson and artist Phil Nixon were called into the Liverpool office. I believe they were in the Newcastle office at the time. Rage, at its peak, had 7 offices throughout the UK, but at this time, they were much smaller. And these guys were offered the chance to convert the Super Nintendo version of Power Drive over to the Jaguar. Spoiler alert, they said yes.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler.
No, Bishop, no, that wasn't an actual spoiler alert. That was a bit of a joke.
It was not funny.
Nah, I suppose not. But when it comes time for the actual spoiler alert in this episode, I'll use your activation keyword, alright?
Fine.
Alright. This game is generally regarded as a sequel, though not a port. There are myriad differences between Power Drive Rally on the Jaguar and its predecessors on the Super Nintendo and elsewhere. The name itself is a pretty big tip-off, and I may mention some of the other differences as we go along. Peter Johnson started out programming on the BBC Micro he got for Christmas in 1982. He started out, like many developers those days, working in BASIC, making versions of popular games like Missile Command. And also, like other developers, he moved into assembly, and after sending out a dozen copies of a Q*bert clone he made to different publishers, he was offered £1,000 by Superior Software. The Q*bert knockoff he made, it was only on sale for a couple months, something about a cease and desist letter. Johnson worked on several games while at Superior, including a well-received arcade racing game called Overdrive, and an official port of Crystal Castles for Atari Soft, later published by US Gold. He fielded a number of other conversions for US Gold and Imagine on a number of different platforms, not just the Micro, but also the Amiga, the Atari ST, Mega Drive, and the CD32. He handled all aspects of these games, including the code, the graphics, and the music, which is pretty impressive. In fact, outside of the video game world, he worked on several soundtracks for TV shows and the like. Man of many talents, it would seem. Johnson set up the Newcastle office for Rage Software, where he stayed until Rage's liquidation in 2003, at which point he helped set up a company called Venom Games, along with several other Rage Newcastle developers. And Venom was later acquired by Take-Two Interactive, where Johnson worked on games like the Xbox 360 port of Prey. His role in those games was more like producer and designer. Power Drive Rally seems to be the last game that Johnson coded himself. So I mentioned that he did all the art and music in his games, and this was true up until Power Drive Rally. Joining him on the graphics side was Phil Nixon, who created all the pixel art, the cars, and the interface. Some of the Super Nintendo source files did make it over to the Jaguar, like the vehicle repair graphics and other bits here and there, but a lot of it was either replaced or upgraded to better leverage the Jaguar's available color depth. The presentation screens are either 16-bit or 24-bit color, and the track graphics are in 8-bit color, 256 colors. Multiple layers make up the gameplay screens, all controlled by the Jaguar's blitter. There's the background, the track itself, the car, the dashboard, a separate layer for shadows, and another layer for environmental effects. The Jaguar, of course, has a higher resolution than the Super Nintendo, and that was used to increase the gameplay area, shrink elements down a little bit so that you could fit more on the screen. Get a better view of your surroundings, see where you're going. In an interview with Atari Explorer Online, Mr. Johnson said that he rather liked working with the Jaguar. He said that it was an excellent piece of equipment, though if he had to do it all over again, he wouldn't have relied so much on one processor. Another addition to the Jaguar port is digitized speech. Instead of an arrow superimposed on the track indicating the direction and severity of the upcoming turn, you have a track navigator, a co-driver, calling it out. Well, I guess you also have an arrow sometimes. The whole game runs at a smooth 50 frames per second. Like many of the graphics assets, the music was also redone. Musician Gordon Hall did the honors here. An early version of Power Drive Rally was previewed at the Summer Consumer Electronics Show in June of 1994, and this was captured by Biff of Biff's Gaming Videos in a recording that I've referenced multiple times before on this podcast. Differences from the final version that I can see include a small speedometer and tachometer in the top left corner. This is similar in appearance to what you'd find in the original Power Drive, and a gear shift in the bottom right, which itself looks like the graphics in the finished Power Drive Rally, but in a different spot. French publication Player One, in their July-August 1994 issue, had some coverage of Atari's presence at the CES, and referred to this game simply by the name Rally. At the Consumer Electronics shows, the Jaguar kiosks had little placards flanking the screen, and these would have the name of the game and other details, but Biff's video doesn't get a good shot of them for Power Drive Rally, so I can't see if it was presented as Rally or Power Drive Rally or something else at this show. The game was shown off again at the Winter Consumer Electronics Show, January 1995. Now, by this point, the game was known as Rage Rally. The rename occurred sometime between January and March, and appeared in the April editions of both Electronic Gaming Monthly and its sister publication, EGM2. Both of these used the name Rage Rally. A much more complete version, with the final name, was shown off at the European Computer Trade Show in March of 1995, and again at the first ever E3 conference in May. According to the press release for E3, the expected availability was June, at a price of just under $55. But it also said that there would be head-to-head two-player action, so what did it know? Along those lines, there was a rumor that networking would be added to this game using the JagLink peripheral. This was mentioned in an issue of the French magazine Consoles Plus, and again in fellow publication CD Consoles, but that rumor was ultimately unfounded. I'll have more on that later. The game was also shown off at the Autumn ECTS in September. The official release date is October 9th at a manufacturer's suggested retail price, which ended up being $64.95. Calculating for inflation, that's the equivalent of $107.49 in 2018 dollars. Yeah, there's a reason why I don't usually calculate these prices for inflation. I usually paraphrase the story behind the game at this point, often embellishing it if I think there are gaps, but here there's no story per se, but there are a few introductory paragraphs in the manual that I'm going to actually read verbatim this time, because I like it. Forget everything they taught you in driving school, because we're going off-road. No yellow lines, no junctions, no pesky pedestrians, just you and the most wicked circuits on the globe. Searing through the Arizona desert, bogging across the African plains, shredding over the Alps, you name it, you're there. Pedal down and white-knuckling all the way to the finish line or cow pasture if you're not careful. So buckle up, pop the clutch, and get ready to terra up the firma in the ultimate 64-bit off-road extravaganza. I like the play on words, turning terra firma into terra up the firma. It's a bit of a pun, but I'll allow it. There are two main game modes here, practice and career. That's a little misleading. Let's say instead that there's the main game and also a practice mode off on the side. In the main game, you can have up to 3 racing seasons going at the same time, identified by your initials, and saved to cartridge, so you and up to 2 buddies or family members can all save your progress individually and load it up later. Excluding practice mode, you start the game with $28,000 cash. If you just wanted to take the money and treat your entire family to a nice vacation in beautiful Sweden, you're totally missing the point of the game. No, the point is to buy a car with that money and use it to compete in races. It's a racing game. If you do well enough, you'll earn money in these races, perhaps buying better cars, and if you've got the skills, you can still make it to Sweden. There are 3 competition classes, 2 car options per class, and 8 total rounds of racing split across 7 weeks, up to 5 days per week. You get the weekends off. Car upgrades are available toward the end of round 2 and near the beginning of round 4 if you have the funds to do so. If you don't, then you simply won't be given the option to upgrade until you can afford the more expensive of the 2 after entry fees for the next race. If you've got the cash though, here are the different cars available in the game. Group N, the starting class. I guess N stands for newbie. Here you can choose between the Fiat Cinquecento Turbo, we'll just call it the 500 Turbo, and the Mini Cooper S. The Mini has a little more power, 92 horsepower versus 87, but that power comes at a cost, $25,000 for the Fiat, $27,000 for the Mini. In Group 2, your choices are the Vauxhall Astra 16V GTI and the Renault Clio Turbo. Again, there's a small power divide between the two, 117 horsepower for the Renault and 121 for the Vauxhall. Now, you don't have to pay the entire cost of the car outright. You get a generous trade-in allowance for your existing Fiat or Mini Cooper. Especially generous considering how often your car was damaged and patched up. You know it's true. You are one tough negotiator, apparently. The net cost after trade-in is $8,000 and $10,000 for the Vauxhall and Renault, respectively. Group 1 options open up after round 6 and consist of the Ford RS Cosworth and the Toyota Celica CT4. The Ford puts out 152 horsepower and costs $12,000 to upgrade, and the Celica is good for 161 horsepower and will run you $14,000. These, you may notice, have 5-speed transmissions as opposed to 4 on the floor with groups 2 and N. Oftentimes, the computer will race the same type of car you do, at least the same class. However, it can upgrade to the next group even if you can't. The manual mentions round 3 for Group 2 cars and round 6 for Group 1. You will be racing in 8 different locales throughout the world. Well, mostly Europe. England, France, Italy, Sweden, and Corsica. Though technically the island of Corsica is part of France. Those are the places in Europe that you'll visit. There is 1 set of races in North America and 1 in Africa. You start off in England, week 1, day 1, and then head east-northeast to Finland for round 2, starting week 1, day 5. Italy is next, week 2, day 4, and then you head across the pond and 3/4 of the way across the United States to race in Arizona, starting week 3, day 4. You go all the way back to Europe to race in France, starting week 4, day 3, and then up to Sweden on day 2 of week number 5. From there, head south, way south to Kenya, week 6, day 2, and then up to Corsica on week 7, day 2. All told, you race 4 days each in England, Finland, Arizona, and France, 5 days each in Italy, Sweden, and Kenya, and finally 3 days in Corsica. Each locale has its own music and its own overall look, which matches the location appropriately. You'll encounter 4 different environmental conditions, some locales experiencing more of one than the other. There are bright sunshiny days, rainy days, snowy days, and also nighttime races, where you are highly advised to use your headlights. Expect to slip in the rain and especially in the snow, where you will also find patches of ice. You can get a taste of 4 of these locales in practice mode, which lets you choose between England at night, Finland in the snow, Corsica, and Kenya. Practice mode is also good for getting the feel of your car, and the game helpfully gives you a sampling of those too. In England, you control the Renault. In Finland, it's the Vauxhall. The Corsica track has the Ford, and you've got the Toyota in Kenya. There are some advanced maneuvers you can perform with your car, so it's better to get comfortable with them in practice mode than in career mode, where there's actual real-life imaginary money on the line. There are 4 types of races you'll encounter in your Power Drive Rally career: Special Stage, Rallycross, Skill Test, and Endurance. The Special Stage is a race against time, 3 laps around the track. The Rallycross is a race against time, 3 laps around the track. Also, there's a computer-controlled opponent racing against you. You get a $1,000 bonus for beating him across the finish line. The Skill Test is a race against time, but no laps around the track. This one is very different from the others. You're in more of an arena than a track, a largely open area with an obstacle course laid out using both traffic cones and red and white striped walls. You have to complete certain tasks in the allotted time to move on. You'll be asked to come to a stop at a certain point. The word stop will be written on the ground with a line next to it, and you pretty much have to plant your front tires on or just over that line. It's kind of, your car has to straddle that line. You will also be asked to back up into a little cubby, navigate a slalom, and drive through a spiral of cones to park on a bullseye in the center. There is a flag man at the first 2 challenges, and if you're successful, he'll raise a flag and you'll hear this sound to know that it's clear to proceed. When you land on a bullseye, the cones all disappear. If they don't, then you missed one of the earlier challenges, the stopping on the mark or driving in reverse. Once the cones disappear, you need to proceed to the exit. There is a rectangular section marked on the ground with the word exit, and you need to stop within that rectangle to finally clear the level. If you run over any cones in the process, and they are everywhere, you will immediately lose 10 seconds off of your timer for each cone that you clobber. And finally, an endurance race means that you have to compete for 5 laps, not just 3. All told, there are 34 stages in career mode, most of them distributed between Rallycross and Special Stages, but there are 4 of those skill tests that you need to get through. All these tracks have a qualify time and a course record time. You've got to beat the qualify time in order to proceed, and if you're good enough to beat the course record, you get awarded a cash bonus. According to the manual, at least. That's outside my narrow set of skills, and Kevin Cal has a video on YouTube playing Power Drive Rally, a couple of videos, and in one of them, I'll link to the specific moment in the video where you can see him clearly beating the course record, but receiving no bonus. So it seems like the manual is wrong in this regard. You may find power-ups in predetermined locations along the track. These take the form of icons that hop up and down. You claim the power-ups simply by driving over them, and they take effect immediately. There are 3 power-ups in the game. First is money. It's a glowing stack of disproportionately large bills with a red strap bundling them together. drive over this to pick up an extra $250. The Nitro power-up looks like a couple of cylinders, blue and silver. When you grab this, you get what the manual describes as a short burst of speed. In my experience, it seems to launch you up past your vehicle's normal maximum speed, but not always. The effect seems to be less the slower you go. If you just creep up to it, you'll get the sound, but it'll do pretty much nothing for you. Finally, there's the time power-up. It looks like... Okay, my first impression was that it looks like a Gizmondo, the ambitious but ultimately disastrous handheld video game console from 2005. The icon looks a whole lot like that, but without the D-pad or buttons. So, basically a dark gray square with a smaller light gray square inside of it, offset vertically, and what looks like a screen in the middle of the light gray square. I guess it's a digital stopwatch or something. Its bouncing animation may include ringing bells at the top. I couldn't quite tell. Anyway, when you pick up the time power-up, it'll halt the on-screen timer for 5 seconds. The cost of entering each race increases with each round, but so do the winnings. Round 1 costs $1,000 to enter and pays out twice that when you win. Round 2 costs $1,250, but pays out $2,500. It proceeds like this up through the rounds. Each entry fee increases by $250 over the last round, and each payout by $500 up through round 8, which costs $2,750 to enter and gives you $5,500 for a win. Entry in the next race is compulsory. You don't get a choice. No sooner does your prize money come in than you're ponying up for the next event. There's no taking your crew out for pizza or anything. It's back to work right away. Car repairs are performed after entry into the next race. Repairs are concentrated into 5 categories: engine, suspension, tires, that's the British spelling of tires, T-Y-R-E-S. Each one of these has a damage rating from 0% up through, 99%, 100%. You can repair them a little or all at once, given enough money. The screen only shows you the out-the-door full repair cost of that component, but you can repair in 1% increments, and it's a bit of a mystery how much 1% will cost unless you, wait for it, do the math. Whether that's fitting, given the Jaguar's marketing slogan, or annoying, I'll leave that up to you to decide. Take the listed repair cost and divide that by the percent damage. So, if your engine is showing 4% damage and the quote is $220, divide 220 by 4 to get the cost of each percentage point. So in this case, $55. You can drive with damaged parts, but there are drawbacks. A damaged engine won't go as fast, it'll accelerate more slowly. Balding tires won't grip the road as well, headlights will flicker, that sort of thing. You will notice your performance dropping if you let your vehicle fall into disrepair, and given the tight qualifier margins in these races, bald tires or a weaker engine can make all the difference. The repair cost varies depending on the class of car you're driving. In Group N, for example, the engine is $55 to repair 1%, suspension is $10, tires are $12, brakes are $8, and lights are $3. In Group 2, those numbers increase. Engine $75, suspension $16, brakes $12, and lights $5. I believe tires stay the same throughout because they're tires. It's not terribly car specific. Nice attention to detail, though, if true. When you start a new game in career mode, you are asked to enter your initials. These will be used for your saved game slot as well as your high score, if you get one. At the bottom of the repair screen, you are given the option to save player. Choosing this brings you to a separate menu showing the 3 saved game slots. Push 1, 2, or 3 on the keypad, and your progress will be saved to that slot. If there's a saved game already in that slot, it'll show the initials, money, and completed race number. Otherwise, it shows the word empty. Overwriting a saved game does not prompt for confirmation, so be certain which keypad button you push. The high score table is automatically updated using your initials and cash amount. There are 7 high score slots with the cartridge default cash values of 1,000 at the bottom and 10,000 at the top. The top 4 slots are likely the development staff, PAJ for Peter Johnson, FIL for Phil Nixon, GGH for Gordon Hall, and JON for tester John Boundy. The others, MIK, DJM, and JEN, I don't know what those are. If you do not finish any given event in the time provided, you have to fork over that entry fee again. You are told you have failed to qualify, and the entry fee is pulled out of your pile of cash again so that you can retry. If you don't have enough money left over to cover the entry fee, well, that's it. It's game over. Just in case, though, the game does take all of your remaining money. You're left with a lingering re-entry fee balance and $0 in the bank. You can't just keep the cash and walk away. No, they've got to take it all before showing the game over screen. The text, "You have insufficient funds to continue," appear on the screen in front of a field of Power Drive Rally logos moving diagonally down and left over a dark blue background. The words "Game Over" in all caps drop down from the top. When you complete all 34 stages, you win the game. What happens when you win? Well, I'm not telling. Not, of course, without this. Bishop. Activate spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. If you wish to avoid spoilers, skip ahead 1 minute 18 seconds on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark.
First, a word about the last few levels. Round 8, Corsica. They are all effectively endurance races. 5 laps, no opponent, just you against the clock. The last race will say last race, kind of makes sense. If you cross the finish line on lap 5 within 4 minutes and 8 seconds, you get the stage results screen as usual, but now, something different. Well, there's the title music, that's not different, but in the top left you see the words "Well Done" in all caps, and to the right you see a large golden trophy. A cup with what looks like a nude female figure on the top holding 2 ribbons, red and white, which drape down and wrap around the handles of the trophy. There's text on the left side of the screen which reads, "You have completed this season's racing. Good luck next season." And this is followed by the scrolling credits. The credits don't take long. It's only 4 people who put this game together. There's programming, artwork and maps, music, map testing, and there's also an entry for game concept, which credits Rage Liverpool. After the trophy sequence, we see a game over screen just like before with the field of Power Drive Rally logos, only instead of saying insufficient funds, here it reads, "You have completed Power Drive Rally," and then game over drops down from the top.
End of spoilers. The remainder of this episode is spoiler-free, and hopefully a bit more satisfying.
Power Drive Rally does have a multiplayer mode, where up to 8 players can compete against each other and work through the career mode levels. Each player enters his initials and races in turn, and the fastest time on each track gets a $1,000 bonus. You get points depending on how you finish compared to other players. First place for each race earns 5 points, second place gets 4 points, and on down the line. Just like the single-player career mode, there is a minimum qualify time, and if you fail to finish the race within that threshold, you get 0 points. However, unlike single-player career mode, you can still enter the next race given 2 requirements. 1, you have the money to cover the entry fees. There are still entry fees, and if you're not earning prize money by completing the race on time, you'll quickly find yourself out of the running. And 2, if none of the players qualify, then everybody has to race that same track over again. Now, I mentioned earlier that there was a rumor about multiplayer over Jaglink, which would have allowed 2 players on the same track at the same time. Consoles Plus magazine, translated, says, "It will even be possible to play with 2 via Jaglink," and also, "Small novelty compared to previous versions, it will be possible to play 2 simultaneously on 2 televisions and 2 Jaguars via Jaglink." Arethius sent me a preview out of CD Consoles magazine, June 1995, which translated to English adds, "You could have the possibility to link 2 Jaguars in order to challenge a friend." I dug through a ROM dump of Power Drive Rally, and I couldn't find any references to Jaglink or networked multiplayer, but, that's not really conclusive. I didn't do a disassembly or anything, so out of due diligence, I hooked up 2 Jaguars over Jaglink. I only have 1 physical copy of the game, so a skunk board served as a stand-in for the second. And I tried everything I could think of, but there was no indication that the Jaguars were able to see each other, so whether or not this was indeed a planned feature, I can't say, but it certainly did not make it into the final product. Power Drive Rally uses a single standard Atari Jaguar controller. If you have more than one player, you just pass the controller around, like you do with Pinball Fantasies. By default, the B button accelerates, the C button brakes, and the A button toggles reverse. You can change these buttons however you wish. The others I'm about to list off, not so much. The pause button, for example, it's always going to pause. Well, at least during gameplay. While paused, you can hide the small paused message that appears on the screen by pushing 1 and 3 on the keypad at the same time. Pushing A, B, or C while paused will let you adjust the volume, but if you didn't want to go through all the trouble of pausing the game first, you can just hit the Option button at any time to open up the sound mixer. The sound mixer gives you the ability to fine-tune the music, the sound effects, and the engine noise independently. Press A, B, or C to highlight each section, and then left or right on the D-pad to move the volume slider. You can't completely disable the engine noise, though you'll still hear it to some extent. To give you an idea of the sound effects volume, your track navigator will start barking out random directions in rapid fire. If you're listening to this podcast while driving your car somewhere, do not follow these directions that I'm about to play. It will not end well for you. Got that? Okay, here's what it sounds like.
Easy right, mid right, square left, tighten, mid left, easy left, hairpin right.
Option again to close the sound mixer. Back to the controller, continuing counterclockwise, you get to the D-pad. Left and right, steer, left and right, and up and down will make your car hover or descend, respectively.
You are such a liar.
Yeah, that's not true at all. I was just seeing if you're still awake. But be honest, you never did try that out, did you? Now, in all seriousness, it is critical to remember that left and right is always from the perspective of your driver. It's your driver's left and your driver's right, no matter which direction they're facing on the screen. This might be a little confusing at first, but it is absolutely the way it should have been done. If in doubt, your navigator never mixes up his left and right, so you can trust his directions. There are some advanced maneuvers that you can perform as you're driving, which are listed in the manual. First, there's the pendulum turn. Here's what the manual reads. When entering a tight bend, steer away from the corner, then turn back into it at the critical point. The back end of your car will swing out as the rear wheels lose grip, allowing you to maintain maximum RPMs. Caution, you may trash many a quarter panel at first, but keep practicing. Pendulum turns will definitely save you time in the long run. Next is the handbrake turn. At a hairpin corner, brake as you turn into the curve. All 4 wheels will lose grip, and you should skid around the hairpin on the best possible line. Don't be surprised if you let out a hearty yee-haw while performing this maneuver. And finally, the power slide. Skid around a series of tight or fast corners by steering sharply into each bend, like a pendulum turn without steering out. Works best at 70+ miles per hour. In my personal experience, handbrake turns are awesome if you can nail them just right. You keep on the accelerator, lay on the brake while turning just long enough to complete your turn, then let go of the brake. I've never let out a hearty yee-haw while doing this, but it is highly satisfying when you pull off a flawless handbrake turn. The keypad has a couple of functions here. The 2 button toggles the headlights. They only work at night, which sort of makes me wonder why they aren't on by default in nighttime races, but it's not a big deal. What is a big deal is the 3 button. This works the horn. You can tap it, or lay it on thick. Gameplay-wise, it makes absolutely no difference whatsoever. Might even slow you down a bit because you're not focusing on the accelerator, but hey, neat, they give you a horn. Whee! The rest of the keypad does nothing, save star and hash to reset the Jaguar. The 0 button does toggle the music, but only during gameplay. It doesn't affect the title screen or anything else. An interesting thing about the keypad can be found in the manual. It talks about 2 and 3, sure, but says not applicable for 1, 4, 5, 7, 8, and 0. Now, if I learned anything watching the count on Sesame Street, there are a couple of numbers missing there, 6 and 9. These will actually come up later in this episode, so keep your purple pointed ears open for that. From the main menu, if you hold down star, option, and hash, you will wipe your cartridge memory, deleting all saved games and high scores. Don't do that unless you really mean it. Booting up, Power Drive Rally first gives you the copyright screen, white text on a black background. The game's excitement level can only go up from here. This lasts only for a couple of seconds before yielding to the bright white vanity screen for Time Warner Interactive. The eyeball-shaped logo slides in from the left, revealing the company name in its wake. Again, this is pretty quick, 4 seconds total. Also white is the developer's logo, the word Rage in red, and an image of a rally car before the E. 4 seconds here, too. This is when the music kicks in. The screen cuts to black while the name of the game, well, part of it, the part that's Power Drive, appears in the center, initially very squished horizontally. But worry not, my friends, the aspect ratio is fluid. The logo smoothly stretches out, a bit wider than it should, and then moves to the top left corner of the screen, where it assumes the correct dimensions. The word Rally appears below that, and now the title of the game is complete. Each word in the title is a different font and color scheme. Power has an orange to yellow gradient in a handwritten sort of font. Drive is shiny blue chrome with stylish futuristic lettering. These are very much like the original Power Drive game, just cleaner and shinier. What's new here is the word Rally, which is all lowercase in outlined letters, yellow to green gradient, and the letter Y stretching underneath the rest of the word. The word Rally actually arrives about the same time as a full-screen high-color image. Not as part of the image, but appearing about the same time and sliding up to the rest of the title. The full screen picture shows cloudy purple skies, the sun setting behind a mountain range with a solitary snow-capped peak, a lake or sea between it and the foreground, which shows a car airborne over an asphalt road. It's got blurry speed lines behind it and everything. The car is white and red with an Atari Fuji logo in the rear, and 2 occupants wisely wearing helmets. Some lovely purple flowers are in the bottom left corner, along with some rough grass and rocks. The menu slides in from the left, bottom left, in bold white letters. A for practice, B to start, C to load game. And the number of players below that defaulting at 1. There's so much motion in this opening sequence, and it's so smooth and quick, you might not even notice some of it on a conscious level. But if you look closely and don't blink, or, as I did, step through a video frame by frame, you can pick it all up. If you wait about 25 seconds, you'll see the high score screen. The high scores slide up from the bottom, and in the background there are 4 rows of locale thumbnail images. The first and third rows move to the right, second and fourth move to the left. Right moving images are repeating pictures of the stages for Arizona, Sweden, France, and Corsica in that order, and the left moving pictures are of England, Finland, Italy, and Kenya. 10 seconds after it begins, it ends, and we get some gameplay footage. We see Finland, week 1, day 5, snowy, and only about 12 seconds of actual driving, plus the start and premature end of the race, so about 18 seconds total, and then we're back to the title screen sequence. Pressing any button at any time will take you back to the title screen, unless it's on the loading screen for the gameplay demo. The attract mode will continue in this loop, changing up the gameplay segments. There are 4 of these gameplay segments in total. After Finland, it's week 3, day 1 in Italy, sunny, then week 6, day 2 in Kenya, also sunny, and finally week 4, day 5 in France at night, before going back to Finland. From the title screen, if you push the option button, you can change your button assignments. No, strike that. You will change your button assignments, because how it works is that it immediately expects you to enter the buttons for accelerate, brake, and, well, reverse it auto-assigns based off of the only button that's available. Process of elimination. There's no way to back out of this without resetting the Jaguar, which I'd have to say is not a great user experience. If you select practice mode by pushing A, you get a rotating circle of pictures, 4 of them, each one showing a different locale. As you move the D-pad left or right to cycle between them, the selected one at the top will also show the name of the country. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, when you start a new game in the default career mode, you get a screen where you can enter your initials. The letters A through Z are arranged counterclockwise in a circle. They spin in from outside the screen and land surrounding the front of a car with lens flare headlights on a black background. An arrow at the top points to the currently selected letter, and you move the circle around left or right on the D-pad, selecting a letter with the B button. There's a delete, DEL, and end, END option as well, and a space character between the DEL and the letter Z. After you've got your initials in there and hit end, the letters spin out and expand off the screen, and the car in the center zooms towards you in a flash of light. After this, you're off to go car shopping, either for the Fiat or the Mini Cooper. The two choices zoom in from either side of the screen and screech to a halt about a third of the way across, where they will each spin in opposite directions so that you can get a good look at them from all angles. The name, description, and cost appear below each car, and there is a tire tread pattern in the center of the screen, fading in from the black background. Your current funds are shown at the top of the screen, which, remember, starts at $28,000. You move left or right on the D-pad to choose your car. The selected text will be white instead of gray, and you can use up and down on the D-pad to cycle between the different color options, which is neat. It's not just a single color, too. Many of them have patterns and color combinations. Once you select your car, the other one slides off the screen, and your chosen rally machine moves to the center for a couple seconds before zooming off to the bottom of the screen, while the remaining funds and tire tread background slide off toward the top. At this point, you get the track intro screen, which has its own music. Here's what it looks like. Black background, and there's a world map. It looks like a cropped topographical Mercator projection. You lose most everything north of the Scandinavian peninsula and south of Tierra del Fuego, give or take. There are bright spots in the top left and bottom right corners. The map sort of tilts in, while other elements slide in from the left, right, top, and bottom of the screen, such that they all pass over each other before arriving at their final position. You can see the week number and day number, the country, or state, or whatever, in all caps, and then the type of race below that in smaller mixed case letters, like Rallycross or Skill Test. All of this text is positioned to the right of a picture, not a photo, but a drawn picture illustrating the area like a visual representation of a region. Finland shows a picturesque mountain, England is a forested countryside, that sort of thing. Below all this, you have the word conditions and a square icon indicating what kind of weather to expect. A sun shining through white puffy clouds for daytime, storm clouds with a yellow lightning bolt for rain, a moon over a starry blue sky for nighttime, and a gray view of falling snow for wintry conditions. You can't skip this screen because the level is busy loading in the background. It lasts about as long as the music. Then a black screen, and you can hear the countdown to the start of the race as the view fades in from black.
3, 2, 1, go!
The countdown number is shown on the screen as a white number on the side of a tire, and this tire is floating in front of your car. When it reaches go, that tire peels out to the right, leaving a trail of fire, a la Back to the Future, and this is really cool. Unlike Back to the Future, the word go, with an exclamation point, briefly forms out of the flames. It only lasts for a moment, the flames dissipate quickly, and you can easily miss the letters if you're not looking for them, but it's an impressive little bit of animation. While this is happening, the timer slides down from the top of the screen, and your gear shift and instrument cluster slide up from the bottom. The timer consists of the word time in white text, and the minutes and seconds in a blocky font with kind of a blue to yellow color gradient. In smaller digits, it shows hundredths of a second. This timer, all of it, will start flashing when it reaches 10 seconds remaining. In the bottom left of the screen, you have a gear shift pattern 1 through 4 plus reverse for the Group N and Group 2 cars, and 1 through 5 plus reverse for the Group 1 cars. Inside the gear shift gates, you'll see a large brown and black gear shift knob that moves as your car auto shifts between the gears. It's a manual-looking transmission that changes gears automatically. The gear shift knob was rendered in 3D Studio, so looks pretty realistic here. On the right, bottom right of the screen, you have a tachometer, which looks like it goes up to 10,000 RPMs and has a red line at 8,000. Nestled in the bottom right corner of the tach is your speedometer, a 3-digit green LED-style display with a brown MPH or miles per hour label at the bottom. Now, Unlike Val d'Isere skiing and snowboarding, which I've already covered, and Super Burnout coming up in a later episode, Power Drive Rally does not seem to be localized. It's in miles per hour regardless of if you're running an NTSC or PAL console. You really don't have a lot of time between the screen fading in and the race actually starting. You don't even have the timer and other indicators before go time. This can make it hard to get acclimated to be actually ready to go, but no time is wasted, that's for sure. During the race, while you're racing, your navigator will announce upcoming turns and other features as they approach.
Left, right, easy right, mid-left, mid-right, K right, square right, acute right, hairpin right, tighten.
And at the same time, positioned above your car may be a floating arrow pointing in the direction of the turn, for the more severe turns, at least, like a 90-degree turn or a hairpin turn. Your navigator, as I said, also announces other things like bridges,
overbridge,
and jumps.
big jump,
And if you don't have a turn coming up right away, he'll list off the number of meters, I think it's meters, it could be yards, I suppose, before the next turn.
40, 110, 130.
If you end up driving backwards on a track, there's no separate indicator or anything to let you know that you're going the wrong way, and your track navigator will give you terrible advice. Each time you loop around the track and cross the finish line, you get a little checkered flag to serve as a lap counter. The little flag appears around the center of the screen and then spins up to the top, where it takes its place next to the timer. For most races, there are 3 laps, and the flags appear side by side. For endurance races and others with 5 laps, the flags will overlap a bit. When you finish a race, or the time expires, whichever comes first, the timer and gauge will slide off their respective edges of the screen and you fade to black. You get your between round music, and see a black background with the tire tread pattern in the center. A long yellow rectangle will flip its way up to the top of the screen bearing the words stage results in black text. In white text, you see your time, qualified time, and course record. These are filled in one at a time to make it more dramatic-like, and contain minutes, seconds, and hundredths of a second. At the bottom of the screen, you have your remaining money, labeled funds. If you qualified, meaning your time was less than the qualified time, you'll see the text qualify above your funds and cash amount you receive. The word qualify changes to first if you finished ahead of the computer opponents for rallycross events, and then changes to total, and the amount is added to your funds in increments of $100. Once added in, the word total changes to next race and shows the cost of the next race. This is deducted from your available funds in $100 increments. Easy come, easy go. Or rather, hard to come by, easy go, which doesn't sound as catchy, does it? If you have failed to qualify, you won't see any of this. You'll see the tire tread background with the text, "You have failed to qualify." The re-entry cost appears. This is the same as the next race cost. There's no discount for repeat customers, and this is deducted from your available funds. If you are all out of money, you'll see your funds at $0 with an outstanding re-entry balance for a few seconds, just to drive home the point, and then the text and tire tread pattern fall off of the screen at different speeds, which is kind of neat. And you get the title screen music with a moving field of Power Drive Rally logos on a blue background. And this has the text, "You have insufficient funds to continue." And then "Game Over" in giant letters drops down from the top, weighing down the insufficient funds thing. Push a button and you're back to the title screen. Now, if you did still have money left over, it's time to assess and fix up your car. A picture of an engine scales in from a black background. A wireframe diagram of your car slides in from the top. The list of components and their damage percentage slides in from the bottom. And your remaining funds and total repair cost, those slide in from the right. All of the text is in green except for the word repair, which, along with its nearby spinning red arrow, points to one component at a time. As you move the D-pad up and down, the repair marker moves up and down, the total cost changes, and the wireframe diagram highlights the different components in pulsing yellow to red lines. The 3 buttons on your controller, A, B, and C, they all do different things here, but there's no on-screen indicator of what does what. If you push A, that'll perform a complete repair of the selected component, engine, suspension, tires, brakes, or lights, for the cost shown at the top. If you did not want to perform a complete repair, you could use the B button to remove the damage 1% at a time. The cost of this isn't obvious, you need to do the math in your head, but that's okay, you bought a Jaguar because you like doing the math, right? Yeah, so each time you pull off 1% of damage, you'll hear this annoying sound. And the damage percentage, total repair cost, and available funds all adjust accordingly. If you push the C button, you will exit the repair screen altogether. This happens immediately, there's no confirmation or anything, so don't push C unless you're absolutely done, and do not mix up C and A, as I may or may not have done repeatedly. In a single-player game, you'll see Save Player at the bottom. Move your repair marker down there, and push the B button to open up the Save Player screen. You'll see a menu with 3 options, labeled 1, 2, and 3. Push the matching keypad button to save your game in that slot. There's no confirmation here, so make sure you hit the right one. You can also hit 0 to exit without saving. When you push the button, you hear, and the chosen slot is updated with your initials, your cash balance, and the race number, which would be the number for the next race. So if you just completed race number 6, it'll show a 7 when you save, since that'll be your next race. In the background of the screen is the same card that you saw while entering your initials, but it's flickering in a way that conveys motion. I can't really describe it, so I won't bother trying. All of this is the single-player stuff. Some things differ when you're in multiplayer. When you start a multiplayer game, each player will enter his or her initials, pick out a car, run the first race, and perform repairs, all before it's the next player's turn to do those things. In the stage results screen, instead of course record, you have the text time to beat. This stores the best time so far on that track, and whoever ends up with the best time gets a $1,000 bonus. Finishing ahead of the computer opponent in Rallycross also nets you an extra grand, just like in single player. After everyone has raced for that round, there's a new screen, the Best Times screen. This shows a static picture of a white and blue car, a hatchback with a spoiler, driving out of a background with a desert on one side and a snowy climate on the other. The player number and initials are listed here in order of the most points. I know I mentioned about the multiplayer points before, but just to reiterate, it's 5 points for first place, 4 points for second, 3 for third, 2 for fourth, 1 for fifth, and if you have more than 5 players, everyone else gets 0. You also get 0 if you don't qualify. At the bottom of the screen in blue text, you'll see the cash bonus for the fastest time. It'll say something like $1,000 bonus to player 3. After hitting the B button, it's gotta be B, you have the overall scores, the overall competition status. Driver's Championship is written at the top of the screen in blue text, and the numbers, initials, and total scores in points for all the competitors are shown below that. Starting with the second race, the second time through, you don't have to enter initials or choose cars, you already did that. So to announce which player is up next, you'll see that player's number scroll across the screen, right to left, 4 slightly different times in 3 different shades of blue plus white. It'll spell out player 1 or player 2 or whatever, ONETWO and so forth. It looks pretty cool. Players will drop out as they run out of money, seeing the same game over sequence that you see in single player. But the show must go on, and does for the remaining players, or single player, as the case may be. Even if one player far outlasts the others, you'll still see the best times and Drivers' Championship screens, and the scrolling text announcing the player number. When every player has run out of money, you will see the high score screen, and then back to the title screen. I say run out of money, kind of assuming nobody's actually going to finish this game. It's been done, but man, it's certainly not going to be an everyday occurrence. The game is played from an overhead perspective. Not directly overhead, but tilted back a bit. I don't know, 30 or 35 degrees off of vertical. It's less than 45 though, I'm pretty sure. The screen doesn't rotate, your car does, so the screen largely just moves up, down, left, and right around the car. The car doesn't stay fixed in one specific point of your view. It'll vary depending on the direction and your position on the track. You would definitely be excused for thinking this game looks like you're racing miniature cars. It does definitely have that look, which is probably unintentional. Maybe it's the type of cars that you start out racing, boxy little things. If you started out with a Celica, then maybe it wouldn't look quite so toy-like. The levels themselves are incredibly detailed. No, I take that back. It's not just the levels, it's everything that has tremendous detail here when you're racing. For example, when you turn your car, you're not turning the whole car, you're turning the front wheels. You see the front wheels turn, and the rest of the car necessarily follows. The wheels themselves are actually animated, at least at slow speeds if you look closely. You have working brake lights and a working reverse light. At night, when you turn on your headlights, you see two pools of light in front of your car. This doesn't look that great, to be honest. You have two overlapping pools like a Venn diagram, but only two shades of brightness. There's bright, and there's not so bright around the edges, with very clearly defined circular boundaries for each. The reverse light also does this, but, a single pool of light for nighttime races. Turning on the headlights during the day doesn't seem to have any effect. Each car uses multiple frames of animation to give it a smooth 360-degree spin. You leave tracks in the dirt when making turns mostly, but these don't persist once they're off the screen. The same goes for cones that you might run over while racing. You know the old saying, out of sight, out of screen buffer. If that's how it actually works here, I don't know. The tracks, the skid marks, they seem to be made up of small circles, dots, that you can often see somewhat isolated on the road, which doesn't look as convincing as they do when strung together, overlapping. They're okay, though. It's a minor nitpick. I believe your car also has extra frames for executing jumps. There are berms on the track here and there, so if you hit one at speed, your little car may go airborne for a very brief time. The edges of the track are usually pretty well defined. Some parts will slow you down as you drive over them, like right on the edge of the road slows you down, and some objects will stop you cold, which often results in a spray of little car bits colored to match your chosen paint job. Oh, this is cool. Tall objects cast shadows not just over the ground, but also over your car. You see your car drive through a shadow as you pass behind trees or whatever, given the angle of the sun. As I said before, they used a separate shadow layer to accomplish this effect, and I think it looks really impressive. I like that a lot. It would have been an easy detail to ignore, I think, but no, here it is. What I don't like so much are the pools of water. You can have ponds, you can have little puddles on the roadway, and these will reflect the sky, gray and overcast when it's raining, and you can see the moon at night given the right angle, and clear skies or bright puffy clouds in the daytime. That's all pretty cool, but the problem I have with this effect is that the water is perfectly placid, as reflective as a mirror. Is it reflecting the sky, or are you driving on some sort of floating island above the clouds? It's hard to say, and I found that distracting at times. Daytime is the worst in this regard, at least when there are clouds in the sky. The others, they're okay, I guess. When there's not much detail to reflect, they're pretty good. You can have driving rain, flashes of lightning, and gently falling snow on these tracks. With the rain, you can actually see little splashes on the ground, and with the snow, well, it's less convincing if you look closely. There are fairly regular patterns of large and small flakes falling in a vertical sinusoidal manner. You can kick up dirt or snow or water as you drive, and you can sometimes see things fly overhead, a small airplane or birds. They don't seem to be animated, but still look pretty neat. It was impressive to see for the first time. You will also see things like Jaguar billboards along the sides of the road, which I always appreciate. There's so many graphical elements here that it's pointless to try to describe them all, so I won't. Sometimes your view of the track is obscured by tall trees or drifting snow or tunnels or other elements, so in this case, practice makes perfect. The better you know the course, the better your chance of completing it in time. You're not going to ace a track on the first try, no matter how competent your navigator.
Easy left.
The music is, well, I think it's kind of a mixed bag. The intro theme and between stage themes, those are great. The in-game music, I don't really care much for that, nor do I really like the little pre-race ditty. Yeah, this one. The worst of the in-game music for me is Arizona, kind of an irritating, twangy nonsense, like a stereotype of what someone might think people in the American Southwest would listen to. As an Arizona native myself, I find this offensive. Okay, not really offensive, just annoying, so I tend to turn off the music in Arizona, if not in the game altogether. Yeah, turn that off, that's obnoxious. Thank you. Anyway, I have kind of a cheat code and some interesting bugs to report here. First, remember back when I was talking about the controls? The manual completely ignores mention of the 6 and 9 buttons, and if you are curious about what these buttons might actually do, they control your computer opponent in rallycross events. 6 will stop him in his tracks, hold him in place, and 9 will release him. Unfortunately, that's the closest I have for a cheat code. I'd like to have more, but this one, I guess, is a way to get an extra $1,000 in rallycross races by ensuring the computer won't reach the finish line first. As for bugs, Jaguar Explorer Online, the November 1999 issue, reports that if you can cause enough damage to certain components of your car, you can gain crazy superpowers. These tips came from a Jason Mazur. First, if you can damage your brakes enough to bring the damage rating to 89 to 93%, and then save the game like that, when you reload the saved game and hit your brakes, you'll launch across the track at like 800 miles per hour. Not terribly helpful, but pretty crazy. If you can cause at least 92% damage to your tires, save the game and then reload, your tires will be smoking and leave black marks wherever you go. And along the same vein, with at least 92% damage to your suspension, and tires too, I guess, hitting a berm or a log or something will launch your car up off the screen. You have to stay within the confines of the track, though, and you can't use this trick to leap over trees or things that would otherwise stop you cold. Also, this effect seems to wear off after 3 tracks or so. I did not try any of these independently, but they sound pretty wild. Power Drive Rally is the only Jaguar game to have completely different packaging depending on its region. North American and European releases have different box art and different manuals, and thanks to a big assist by Arethius, I will describe both in detail. The North American box art is dominated by a photograph of a white Ford Sierra RS Cosworth driving through shallow water, kicking up spray everywhere. All of the Ford logos, there should be one above the grille and one on each side of the shade on top of the windshield. Those have all been removed. Photoshopped, perhaps. I checked up on this. Photoshop 3 was out at the time. That's the first version I used, so they might have used Photoshop. The name of the game is in a black box in the top left corner. The words Power and Drive are green, and Rally is in white. This is partially obscured by the spray of water. In the top right corner is the Time Warner Interactive logo, and the Jaguar hologram sticker below that. In the bottom right corner of the photo, you'll find the ESRB rating, kids to adults, and below that the icon indicating 1 or 2 players, which is both inaccurate and misleading. The screenshot in the bottom left corner looks like a rallycross in Kenya, maybe, and it's surrounded by a jagged green frame. The Jaguar logo and the words Interactive Multimedia Cartridge in the bottom right and very bottom of the box, they look more or less like other Jaguar game boxes. On the back of the box you have 4 screenshots positioned vertically along the left side, each with a different jagged orange frame. The headline reads, "Eat Dirt, Rally Style" in white and yellow letters of varying sizes. The background is black with dark gray words Power Drive Rally repeated over and over in the same font as the front of the box. The text of the box has green scribbling behind it to make it more legible, and here's what it reads. Fueled by a nitro-burning 64-bit graphics engine, Power Drive Rally delivers the sights, sounds, and chaotic intensity of pure rally racing. You'll actually see the skid marks and icicles fly as you tear across the Italian countryside. Hear the gears grind and your navigator sneer as you rip through the Arizona desert. Feel the heart palpitations and adrenaline overload as you bury the needle along the dust-choked African plains. It's dirty, it's ugly, it's uncompromising rally racing, Jaguar style. I don't think you encounter any icicles in the Italy levels. It's not like you're driving through the Italian Alps or anything. Also, I'm not sure the navigator's speech can be considered sneering, and there's no real gear grinding. And where's the Oxford comma, people? Yes, I'm still pushing that. You've got a Time Warner Interactive logo again on the bottom of the box, just above the Atari logo. And that's about it for the North American style. The European release is very much like the box art used for the previous game in the series, Power Drive. You have the same hand-drawn artwork, 2 drivers in a yellow rally car amidst a psychedelic blur, and the logo is just like regular old Power Drive, and very much like the in-game logo, but the word rally here is in a thin horizontal bar below the word drive. In the bottom right corner of the artwork, you have the Time Warner Interactive logo, the Rage Software logo, and the Jaguar hologram sticker from right to left. The screenshot is a different level than what you see on the North American box. England, maybe? But it shows 9 minutes and 38 seconds on the timer, which I don't think it ever actually goes that high. Also a little high are the graphics for the gear shift and tachometer. These are floating a quarter of the way up from the bottom of the screen. The screenshot is framed by a rounded rectangle, kind of purplish. The Jaguar logo, specifically the yellow circles that spell out 64-bit, these are entirely different than the actual logo. It's a recreation and not a very authentic one. The words Interactive Multimedia Cartridge are in white along the bottom. North American box art, they're in red. There's no ESRB logo, but on the bottom flap, the ELSPA rating shows check marks from age 3 on up. On the back of the European box, there are also 4 screenshots arranged vertically. All are different from the North American counterpart, and all are framed by the same purple rounded rectangle as the front of the box. You have the Power Drive Rally logo again at the top, above text in English, French, and German. In English it says, "Fasten your seatbelts, get ready for a world-class performance with Power Drive Rally, featuring more exciting tracks, faster gameplay, outstanding graphics, enhanced sound, and co-driver speech. Power Drive Rally will take your breath away." There are bullet points in paragraph form. Based on the smash hit Power Drive. Features 38 spectacular courses with different terrain and variable weather conditions. Faster gameplay. Incredibly detailed graphics, enhanced color, and improved sound. New feature for the Jaguar, co-driver speech calls out bends and hazards on the course. Password system saves position in competitions. Spectacular crash sequences. Utilizes the full capabilities of the advanced Jaguar console. Okay, a few of these are debatable. There are 38 stages if you include the practice tracks, but there's no password save system. It saves to the cartridge. The crashes are anything but spectacular, and the game looks great, but I wouldn't say it utilizes the full capabilities of the Atari Jaguar. The bottom of the box again has the Time Warner Interactive and Atari logos, but is joined by the Rage Software logo as well. You may have noticed that the copy for the European box references the original Power Drive repeatedly, but such a reference is completely absent on the North American version. Maybe this is why there are these different localized designs. Power Drive was probably a much bigger name, a bigger property in Europe than it was over in the States. Did it even get an official North American release besides the Sega Channel thing? Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't find any evidence that it did. So perhaps a box art that evokes the original makes sense in Europe and no sense in North America, which might explain this difference. But these differences don't end with the box design. The manual layout is totally different too. The content is, I believe, the same, and they're both monochrome booklets on the inside, but The layout differs. On the North American manual, most pages have a jagged black rectangle at the top where the page titles go, a grainy light gray background, and a darker gray scribble down the center. A bit of continuity with the box art, the back of the box, and this continuity extends to the manual's cover, which matches the front of the box. The European manual comes in 3 languages, and its layout is dominated by a pair of tracks curving around the outside edge of the page, leading to a car along the outside edge. The box art is represented on the front cover, but the back cover of the European manual does not have the jaguar claw marks that you find on the North American version and, well, pretty much every other Jaguar game. But unlike pretty much every other Jaguar game, the cover of the European manual is in color. Front and back, color. Spelled C-O-L-O-U-R, no doubt. The cartridge labels differ as well. Both are based off of their respective box art designs. For the North American release, this means the white Ford on the left, box art style logo on the right. Time Warner and ESRB logos are in the middle. For the European release, we have what looks like a darker, color-reduced version of the yellow car artwork overlaid with the Time Warner and Rage Software logos. On the right side is the name of the game using the same font treatments as the box, and a large block of white copyright text. This copyright stuff actually takes up more space than the game's title. The Jaguar logo looks more accurate here. The 64-bit circles are correct on the cartridge, unlike the box and manual. Neither cartridge has the embossed Atari logo on the back, this being a third-party release, but otherwise the carts have the same gray plastic shell that first-party Jaguar games do. The part number I listed off at the top of the show, by the way, I found that inside the flap of a North American box. Its format matches what you'd find on the box and on the disc for Time Warner Interactive's other Jaguar release, which is Primal Rage, so I went with that for the part number. On the side of the European box, there's a different number, 00057. I don't know what that is.
3, 2, 1, go!
There is no entry for Power Drive Rally in the official Jaguar Gamer's Guide, nor could I find any print ads. At all. It's like, hey, Bishop, crickets. Yes, exactly that. So I will move on to reviews, of which I have plenty, but first, some level music that I haven't included yet. I've got a number of reviews to cover, both contemporary and modern, and I'll start, as usual, with the Electronic Gaming Monthly. No, I won't. They didn't review this one. Lame. So, as I was saying, I will start, as usual, with GamePro, September 1995, where reviewer Scary Larry awarded Power Drive Rally the following scores on a scale of 1 to 5. Graphics 3.0, Sound 2.5, Control 2.5, and Fun Factor 2.5. It says the challenge is adjustable, which it really isn't. It also says battery backup, which isn't the case here either. There's no battery here in this cartridge. So, pretty poor ratings. Let's see how he describes the game. He starts off saying that driving a Hyundai looks more attractive than this game. A bit of context, in the early 90s, Hyundais in the States had a reputation for cheap, minimalist, underpowered little sedans. The Accent, and to a lesser extent the Sonata, but their reputation is much better now, as I understand it. I'm not really a car guy. Anyway, back to the review. He wrote, "Four-wheeling never looked so boring. Controls are squirrely and slow," he says, "and even while powered up, your car putters into curves and goes off the track at the slightest resistance. The graphics aren't bad, though, and he likes the lightning and rain effects, but says that the game feels like a bad Micro Machines ripoff, referring to the series of games involving those tiny toy cars. Larry goes on to say that the sound is just a little too much, with funky European music and an annoying British voice, which he says is like writing with your dad. Without any power or graphical wizardry, he closes out, this game doesn't rally to the occasion. Were lame puns against the name of the game required for all GamePro reviews? That definitely seems to be the common thread here. There are 3 screenshots in this review and 3 pro tips. Stay in the middle of the course to avoid colliding with obstacles along the sides like fallen tree branches. The arrows that point backward on the skill tracks indicate that you should back the car into the space. Swing wide on turns to snag power-ups. Let's cut over now to Video Games Magazine, October 1995, where 4 reviewers share their opinion amidst a dozen or so screenshots. Reviewer Jeff calls it, quote, one of the better carts for the Jaguar, and, quote, a joy to play. It's just easy enough that you don't boil over with frustration, he says, yet challenging enough to keep you on your toes. On a scale of 1 to 10, he rates graphics an 8, sound and music a 6, saying again that the co-pilot is annoying, and playability a 7. That averages out to 7 overall, which is the same score awarded by the other 3 reviewers who had little one-line reviews in the top right corner of the page. It doesn't harness all of the Jag's power, according to Chris G., but it's fun. Atari Explorer Online did not include a full review of Power Drive Rally, but it gives the game a score of 7 out of 10. ST Format Magazine, April 1995, has a full-page review with 4 screenshots and carries the headline, Time Warner's new Jaguar Drive 'em Up is certainly pretty, but does it manage to get out of first gear? There's a maxim known as Betteridge's Law of Headlines, where if a headline ends in a question, the answer is almost unequivocally no. The reviewer, Stewart, says that the game really does look lovely, but calls the cloud reflection in the water unnerving and rubbish. He calls the game a slow-moving stop-start game with featureless courses, and that even though it's a rally racing game, deviating from the road to cut a corner over a grassy verge will result in a crunching dead stop and expensive repairs to your seemingly grass-damaged car. In the summary, the highs are that it's pretty and it's quite difficult, but the lows are that it's slow, it's shallow, and it's dull. Overall score 57%, and Betteridge's Law of Headlines nails it again. One interesting thing about this review is that he says Terminator 2000 instead of Tempest 2000. Not that Terminator 2000 sounds like a bad game or anything. Let's go to France. I've never been to France personally, but someday I'd like to. And in France, there is coverage of Power Drive Rally in CD consoles, Joypad, Player One, and ST Magazine. And fortunately, thanks to Arethius, I can share the results of all of these reviews en anglais. We'll start with CD consoles, December 1995. This is a 3-page review with loads of screenshots. They're nothing if not thorough here, and the game is broken out into 5 categories, each on a scale of 1 to 20. Graphics 14, animation 15, sounds 11, playability 15, and playtime 15. Doing the math, that is 69% overall. There is a technical score, though, I believe 2 stars out of 5, which doesn't sound as good. What they liked about the game is that it's very possible to make bold actions, referring to power slides and the like, I'm sure. The game is very fun, and they like the diversity of tracks and weather conditions. What they didn't like is that there's no simultaneous 2-player mode, the music is annoying, and the sound effects lack realism. Yeah, I can actually see that last one. I mean, you can peel out on dirt roads. That doesn't happen in real life. Movies, sure, but not real life. In conclusion, Power Drive Rally may not be the nicest looking nor sounding, but it does have all the necessary ingredients for an enjoyable game. Nice animations and maximum fun. Although it does not make use of the full capabilities of the Jaguar, it remains a very good game. Why only 2 stars then? I don't get this 2-star rating. So we'll move on to Joypad, December 1995. This is a 2-page review dominated by the Euro box art front and center, but there are over a dozen screenshots here too. The game is rated in only 4 categories this time, but still on a scale of 1 to 20, I think. Graphics 18, animation 16, playability 16, and sound and music 15. Overall score 90%. I don't get how their math works here. They say that this is the best of all available versions. They like the 3 saved game slots and live co-pilot advice. And overall, they say that the game has excellent playability. However, you do not feel the power of the Jaguar, and maybe the game is too short. The reviewer says that it's too bad the Jaguar doesn't have more of these games. Power Drive Rally is one of the best games on the console, and it's also the best version of all, if only the playtime had followed. Player One magazine, also December 1995, but they only give this game a 1-page review, the slackers. They say that the difficulty is progressive, though, which is more accurate than what GamePro said. The scores, graphics 85%, animation 92%, sound 80%, playability 90%, for an overall score of 86%. Yeah, the math checks out there. The reviewer says that the implementation of the game is average, but the game is so playable and fun that once you start a game, God only knows when you'll stop. ST Magazine, January 1996. This is a 4-page article about the Jaguar covering topics like the CD-ROM, JagLink Pro Controller, and several games, one of which is Power Drive Rally. The reviewer says the introduction screens are in true color and very pretty. You could think this is a CD-ROM, not a cartridge. And the realism is better than average. It has a nice top-down view, the cars are responsive, the scenery is nice, sliding and skidding on the various types of terrains are nicely rendered. The game remains a bit dull. It misses an I don't know what. Je ne sais quoi. Even we Americans use that phrase verbatim, and I think that most of us know what it means, or failing that, know the right context where it can be used. But I think this is the first time I've actually read something in native French that includes the phrase je ne sais quoi. That's awesome. I get a kick out of that. Sorry, it's weird, but I do. It has a certain, I'm not going to say it. Back to the review. The game misses a je ne sais quoi, which would have made this game a great game. I thought this little something would come later in the game, so I played through the 11 first tracks, and despite those hours, it didn't come. The multiplayer game consists of players playing by taking turns, which is unbelievable with the team tap up to 8 players at once, and it seems I am not the only person who is not very fond of this game. Even my chief editor did not enjoy it. I think it is a matter of personal preference, but my advice, try this one before buying it. There's a scoring breakdown, graphics 80%, sounds 75%, fluidity 80%, playability 85%, interest 55%, and overall 75%. On the more modern side of things, a French blog called JagFan reviewed the game in 2013, giving the game 4 Jaguar letter J's out of 5, and saying that, based more on the pleasure of driving than the sensation of speed, here is a stimulating and complete racing game. This game is full of charm. Take care of those skill tests. Speaking of blog posts, but now back in the English language, Ian Lasky awards Power Drive Rally 9 out of 10, saying that the game is an essential purchase for the Jaguar. Very polished and great fun to play. Just Games Retro 2012 says that it hardly seems fair to take damage even on a perfect run, which is true, you always have to repair something. Multiplayer is limited, it says, and progress there can't be saved, which is also true. However, it's a competent and fun title, but without any must-play hooks. Score from Just Games Retro is 3.5 stars out of 5. Hey Poor Player 2016. The reviewer says that Power Drive Rally is firing on all cylinders and plays like a dream, making it a must-have title and good reason to own the Jaguar in the first place. 4.5 joysticks out of 5. The Video Game Critic in 2011 awarded this game a grade of B+, calling it a hidden gem. He says that the colorful tracks look exceptional and says that the controls are well-tuned. He loves being able to effortlessly execute power slides around hairpin turns. The game may not scream 64-bit, but it is fun. External reviews on Atari Age range from 70 to 92% for an average of 78%. It would seem this game fared much better now than it did back when it was released, which is interesting. And finally, I would be remiss and negligent if I didn't mention the Jaguar, so I'm going to do that right now. The Jaguar covered this game, BTB and his brother, in a 2016 YouTube video linked in the show notes. All of these reviews, by the way, are linked in the show notes, if not embedded outright. BTB calls this one of his top 5 Jaguar games, and his brother Evan calls it his number 1 pick, so high praise. Check out the video for more. Before I move on, how about a brief message from another Atari Jaguar resource?
Heyo, what is up, everybody? BTB from the Jaguar. Hey, you know what I really like to do when I get home? I like to put my feet up, grab a nice cocktail, and listen to the soothing sounds of the Atari Jaguar Game by Game podcast, hosted by the one and only Shinto. Shinto, take it away, my man. Cheers.
Atari Age assigns a rarity score of 3 out of 10 for Power Drive Rally. Despite that fairly low rating, it's not available on any of the Atari vendors that I can see, and recent sales on eBay have shown prices of $45 to $57, mostly loose carts. A handful of copies complete in box sold for $115 to $130, and I do see a PAL region copy with a European box and manual for £80. As far as Jaguar games go, that's kind of high. Current listings, as I record this, loose cart for $100 and one complete in box for $95. For high scores, taking a look at Twin Galaxies, I see 5 entries, all verified in 2004, with a top score of $149,000 set by Todd Smith, edging out Dave Homnuck with $146,500, and both Adam Ryan and Brian Becker with $144,250 each. On my own cartridge, the top score is $35,750 with my brother's initials. It's pretty much dominated by my brother's initials, 4 out of the 7. Where are my entries? Well, find out after the break. I did not buy this game. My brother bought this game. He bought it for his own Jaguar while he was away at college, and then, about 15 years later, he gave it to me along with the rest of his Jaguar stuff. His wife at the time didn't want video games in the house, apparently. So while I had played it back in the 90s, I didn't play it nearly as much as my brother did. He had a saved game in the middle of the Phoenix levels, and as I said, held most of the high scores. A friend of his, I suppose, held one of the other saved game slots, not very far into the game. I overrode it. I think it was an accident, but not a big deal either way. What struck me about the game back then was its attention to detail, the super smooth animation and excellent pixel art. What didn't strike me about the game was how fun it was, because I didn't have a whole lot of fun with it, to be honest. I'm not great at driving games, and even then I can't think of a single driving game with a top-down viewpoint that I liked. Okay, Street Racer on the 2600, Dodgem is good there too. Do those count? Probably not. Very, very different types of games. So, to be honest, I wasn't looking forward to working on this episode. Power Drive Rally didn't seem all that interesting to me. There are others coming up that I'd much rather dig into. It often happens, though, that I really enjoy a game, even if I'm not looking forward to it. The more I get into it, figuring out what makes the game tick, the more I appreciate it and even have fun with it. Did that happen with Power Drive Rally? Well, pretend for a moment that you just read that question as a headline and remember Betteridge's law. While you're pondering that, let me break down my likes and dislikes. In Power Drive Rally, everything has an animation, no matter how trivial. Things don't simply appear on the screen, they slide in or distort or both. And a screen doesn't simply cut to black, there's always movement, always a transition. There's an artistry and dedication that makes me think the developers of Power Drive Rally really cared about their craft. They didn't cut corners, they didn't phone it in, they did an excellent job with the presentation. The polish here, the level of polish, is above reproach.
Edit.
Something I noticed after recording this episode when I went back to capture some missing sounds is that when you're in a race and reset the game with the star and hash buttons, it doesn't simply cut to black and restart from the title screen. No, it behaves like the race ended with the gauges and indicators sliding off the screen in a calm and orderly manner. I'm not sure I've seen that before in a Jaguar game. So much polish here. Wow.
End of edit.
The pixel art that makes up the tracks shows a similar attention to detail. You don't ever really feel like you're driving through a tile set. You're driving through a carefully curated track with neat little touches everywhere, especially if you take the time to stop and look. The little effects like kicking up dirt or splashing through puddles or leaving tracks in the mud, the brake lights and turning wheels, all of that really impressed me then and now. Unlike many of the games on the Jaguar, Power Drive Rally has aged extremely well. Everything is sharp and well-defined. From a 1995 perspective, 2D games may have been old hat, and some of the reviews did complain about the old-school 2D-ness of the game with new 3D games coming out at the same time, but revisit them here in 2018 and which one looks better? Power Drive Rally definitely holds up, no doubt. I think the controls are pretty responsive too. You can definitely feel the progressive damage in your engine and your tires and your suspension. It's especially satisfying when you power slide around a corner and stick to the center of the track. It's feasible too, it just takes practice. I like the title screen and the between-level music. I was watching a playthrough of the Super Nintendo version, and the between-level music is cringeworthy. The more I watched, the more I hated it. I don't get anything like that here in Power Drive Rally, except maybe the Arizona levels, but you can turn that off easily enough. The in-level music, when you're actually racing, it isn't of the same caliber as the theme song and the music between the races, but it's reasonable, I guess. I don't like the AI, the computer opponent. Just to test it out, I parked my car sideways in its path. It did not move to avoid me, it just kept ramming me until I was kind of pushed out of the way. It always seems to run a reasonably perfect path around the track, just not at the fastest speed it technically could. I don't like the tight qualifier times, or especially the steep re-entry fees. How about a 50% discount for repeat customers? That'd be nice. You're pretty much guaranteed, when you reach a new track, that you're going to bomb it and have to retry. One of the reviews called this a honeymoon period to get used to a track. You can always load a saved game so that you don't have to lose any money in the process, but that seems a little weak to me. Maybe there are people out there who can qualify on a track the very first time they try it, but my name certainly wouldn't be on that list. The skill tests aren't any fun. I don't enjoy those at all. They seem fairly universally disliked going through the reviews. And speaking of the skill tests, there's some inconsistent capitalization in the game. Rallycross, special stage, those words are capitalized, but for skill test, only the word skill has the first letter in uppercase. Course record, those words are capitalized, but the word time in your time or qualified time, those aren't. If I sound like I'm nitpicking, yes, I'm totally nitpicking, and I'm probably being obnoxious and irritating, so I'll move on. Other dislikes, lack of a simultaneous two-player mode is a bit of a disappointment. The box says 1 or 2 players, so I thought before really digging into this one that maybe there's a simultaneous two-player mode that I missed before. My son was there, we were going to play some two-player Power Drive Rally, but no, it didn't work out that way, and I'm actually not sure it would have worked. Split screen, I don't know. Would that have been a good experience? Probably not. I don't care for the cars. The Mini is okay, the Fiat, the Vauxhall, the Renault. As an American, those don't resonate for me at all. The only car in the entire vehicle lineup that I would have liked to actually own in real life back in 1995, would have been the Toyota Celica, but I never made it far enough into the game to unlock that one, so I was stuck with a Fiat. To save money, for the inevitable re-entry fees. Why not a Subaru? I like Subarus. Was the Mitsubishi Evo racing around that time? I would have been fine with that too. I don't like how little time you have before the race begins. Now, I was playing this on an LCD monitor, and there's some filtering that goes on in the LCD that might make it lag a bit behind the CRT, but either way, they kind of drop you in the race pretty quickly. There isn't much time to get oriented or turn on your headlights. And finally, among my list of dislikes, I find it odd that the currency used in the game is dollars, but the spelling in the game, especially the word tires, uses the British English spelling. Although I suppose it doesn't have to be US dollars, it could be Australian dollars or New Zealand dollars. Or even Canadian dollars, right? And in those countries, the game spelling of the word tires would be correct. Except Canada. I'm not sure how you spell tires in Canada. Zach, Derek, how do you gentlemen spell the word tires? Moving on to the rating, Phil the No Swear Gamer came up with a pretty cool scale for rating video games. I don't know if he came up with it originally, but I always give him credit for it. So, on the No Swear Gamer scale, the top 5 games on the Jaguar would get a Hall of Fame rating. A large group of games below that, ones that you still enjoy, those are solid. Games that you don't particularly care for, they get a meh rating. And the worst 5 games on the Jaguar get a trash rating. For Power Drive Rally, I'm conflicted. Everything about this game screams solid or higher, but for me, it's not a game that I enjoy playing. It's good, occasionally brilliant, but I went a dozen years without playing it, and I may go another dozen before playing it again, so I'm going to give this one a meh rating. I certainly wouldn't begrudge anybody giving it a solid or even Hall of Fame. I understand that, but I've got to be honest, this one isn't for me. But that's just my opinion. What do you think? I like to post a picture of an advertisement or little preview or something to Facebook when I ask for feedback. But after striking out, trying to find anything like that, I decided to take a picture of my cartridge, but I wanted to juxtapose it somehow. I don't own a rally car, but I do know where to find a dirt road without much effort, so I took my cartridge out there and took a picture of it standing on end in the middle of the road. There was no traffic during this photo shoot, thankfully. So I asked for your feedback, and this is what you said. Björn gets first post honors, saying, "It's a solid game. I had lots of fun playing it. I certainly like the nice 2D graphics, which are a lot better than in the other versions. A 2-player mode would have been fun, but is sadly missing." I agree. I didn't talk much about it in this episode, but watching footage of the previous game, Power Drive, the Jaguar game looks so much better. Cleaner, crisper, better colors, more fluid movement. Your car, for example, rotates more smoothly. Thank you, Bjorn. Trevor says, "I've never owned a Jaguar, but I've enjoyed following along on this podcast journey. This game has me more excited than any other you've covered. I have a major soft spot for these 2D isometric view rally games. If any game could convince me to pick up a Jaguar, it may be this one." Please, Trevor, don't let me dissuade you from seeking this one out. If you have a soft spot for this sort of game, I think you'll love Power Drive Rally. It really is very well done. It's just not a genre that I really get into. Keep an eye out, though. Maybe a cheaper cart will appear on eBay someday. I'm really surprised how expensive they are. So, Trevor, I am thrilled that you like the podcast despite never having owned a Jaguar, and I greatly appreciate your feedback. Thank you. Roberth says, "I may dare to rate it as a Hall of Fame game. Along with Rayman, this is the game that I see myself playing it from start to finish. I love the hand-drawn look here better than both the SNES and Genesis original, and it controls great. It's not as brutally difficult as Cannon Fodder, but the challenge does pick up in the upper levels. It's one of my favorite titles on the system, without a doubt, and if I ever get the chance to get a Jaguar again, I'll make sure to get this game as soon as I can. The fact that only 4 people worked on this is kind of mind-blowing if you think about it. One problem, no 2-player mode, which blows. Yes, 4 people on this game, 4 dedicated, talented people, and it shows. And while our ratings of Power Drive Rally might differ, Roberth, I think we're much more in sync on Rayman, but that's a story for another episode. Bishop, which episode number is Rayman?
Rayman is scheduled for episode 32.
Yeah, 32. Looking forward to it. Keith says, "Yup, very good Jaguar game. Plays well with a lot of nice touches." Thank you, Keith. That's a recurring theme. Lots of nice touches. Must be true. Randall says, "I give it a solid. This is the last game I bought, used from a gaming store, before I traded it all in for a PS3 for my kids." Yeah, I remember that story about trading in the Jaguar stuff for the PS3, because I did almost the exact same thing, but with my brother's Jaguar and duplicate games. That and a couple other things got me a PlayStation 3 for my kids. That was a few years ago, and I think we've certainly gotten a lot of mileage out of it, with Minecraft and Portal 2 and Lego Dimensions. The Rayman games, speaking of Rayman, they're a blast as well, the newer ones. You can have up to 4 players at one time, and it's great fun. We use the PlayStation for all of our streaming needs and Blu-ray playback too. I look at what the Jaguars are selling for these days, and the games that I traded in along with it, and I could have made more money than I did, a fair bit more money, but I'm still pretty happy with the trade, and I believe you are with yours as well. Thanks, Randall. Derek says, "I took a chance on this game. I knew nothing about it. Most of my Jaguar game purchases were made by ordering from Go Atari. Atari Jaguar had practically no support in any game stores where I'm from. They included what looked like a handmade coupon for Power Drive Rally in a previous purchase. The Canadian dollar didn't go very far. I think the exchange rate was about 65 cents on the US dollar, so a deal wasn't something to pass up. Anyway, I was pleasantly surprised when I popped this game into my Jaguar. The music and sound effects were great, controls were tight, graphics were sharp and colorful. I'm having a tough time deciding if it's one of the top 5 games for the Jag, or if it's just solid. Fun to play any way you slice it." I am going to put you down for a solid for now, Derek. If you want to bump that up later, I can make the change on the spreadsheet. It really is a quality game, and to be sure, Jaguar games are sort of hit or miss in quality. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and that Go Atari came through for you, and it sounds like you got a decent deal on it too. It's good to hear from you, Derek, and get your perspective. It was and is difficult to be a Jaguar fan in Canada, as I understand it. And finally, we heard from Lee, who says that this is a must-have title for the Jaguar. That last track is a bitch. I'll have to take your word for it, Lee. I can't even get past Arizona. But thank you, and everyone else on Facebook, for your input. On the forums, Atari Age, Gummy Bear says, "Power Drive Rally equals best racing game on the Jag, I say." Thank you, Mr. Bear. Many share that opinion, but for me, there's at least one that I like better. And doctorclu has this to say for Power Drive Rally. Simply put, Hot Wheels for the Jaguar. Cute game, sometimes gets fun figuring the direction in relation to which way the car is turned. Other than that, pretty solid game. Naturally, I like to try to off-road in what little bit I played this. Yeah, you can't really do any off-roading here unless you count dirt roads, which I don't. I grew up on dirt roads. Well, not on them, near them, so that's not off-roading, no sir. My son played a level or two, had trouble figuring out which direction to turn depending on the orientation of the car, but he plays a lot of games like, well, Lego Dimensions, which I just mentioned a couple minutes ago, and that game has a somewhat similar perspective, but the controls are entirely different. It's a literal mapping of thumbstick direction to on-screen direction, and that, of course, doesn't work here in Power Drive Rally. It's possible to adjust, but it just takes time. Speaking of time, it's time for me to say, hey, Bishop, do we have any text or audio submissions for Power Drive Rally?
We do. 1 text and 1 audio submission.
Ooh, audio submission. I like those, but I like text submissions too. It's all good. Let's do the text submission first.
Ready.
This message is from TrekMD. He says, "Hello, Shinto." Well, hello yourself, TrekMD. "I hope you're doing well. As I write this, I'm recovering from a minor surgery I had 4 days ago. I'm not sure how long it'll take until this email is read in the podcast, but hopefully by the time you read it, I'm all done healing." Well, TrekMD, I just heard your feedback on the Atari 7800 Homebrew podcast, which is far more punctual than the Jaguar Game by Game podcast, and it sounded like you've largely recovered, so good for you. Man, what an ordeal you've been through. They say that doctors make the worst patients, but I'm sure you were nothing but polite to your own doctors. Anyway, feedback. TrekMD continues, "So, how about if I give you some feedback on Power Drive Rally?" Sounds good. "This is one of those overhead view racing games that reminds me of titles like Micro Machines or Super Sprint. I suppose the intent may have been to create a game that copied the gameplay of those titles for the Jaguar without having to deal with licensing." Well, they did have to license the vehicles, I suppose. Anyway, whatever the reason, this is a game that is well done for the console and quite fun to play. In the game, the player controls what looks like a Fiat car in races in various parts of the world, which include Sweden, Italy, USA, and Arizona, France, and Kenya, among others. The racetracks are very nicely rendered and have lots of detail. There are even reflective water puddles, and some of the courses offer different weather conditions for the player to handle, such as thunderstorms or snowstorms. Speaking of handling, the controls work very well, which is important so you can navigate your car properly in all settings. Sound effects are also nicely done and add to the charm of the game. Though the game may not push the Jaguar to its limits, it does have very smoothly animated graphics. Power Drive Rally is absolute fun to play, and every Jaguar owner should have this game in their library. That's great. Thank you, TrekMD. That is a pretty good summary of the game. Lots of detail, definitely, but unfortunately, it looks like it's getting harder for all the Jaguar owners to have this game in their library, given the prices and availability these days. But if you like this kind of game, it may be worth the cost and the effort. I'm glad you're feeling better, TrekMD, and I hope to hear from you again next time. Okay, audio submission time. Bishop, please roll the tape.
There is no tape. This is an MP3 file.
That's just an expression, rolling the... forget it. Please play the MP3 file.
Shinto, this is Arethius from the Retro Gaming Connection. The wife is out, the kid is asleep, and I thought I made my first audio submission to your podcast. I hope you'll put this submission to the end of the submission, because it's kind of an episode submission and general feedback submission. And if it's not too much to ask to you. Regarding Power Drive Rally, I just had 1 hour playing time with it, and I like the game. Yeah, I like the game. I think it's a solid game. I just think it's way too difficult for me. For years, I've tried to beat this game, and I'm still on level 13, the skill test, Italian skill test, and I just can't pass it. I don't know why, but I can't. All the other previous levels, I could eventually pass them, but this one, man, way too hard for me. Way too hard. And I don't know, it's maybe because how my game room is configured and my television is on a higher level than my eyes, and maybe so I focus too much on the timer. So too much on the timer and not enough on the road. But now I can't. I really can't. But well, I already spoke about all the difficulties. I did not mention what I like about the game. I do like the graphic. They're cute. They're colorful. They are not 64 bits, but they are nicely drawn. And I like the small touches, such the reflection on the water flakes, the little spares and sparks when you hit something. But yeah, I like it. I found the engine motor not to be really realistic, but it's okay. I think it fits the game. The music is okay. It fits the game, but not memorable either. And yes, I think that's pretty much it for what I really like. For what I did not like at the beginning, but kind of like it now, it was first the interface. I think I saw it when I made on my previous email submissions. I think that a game should have a proper menu. A menu, and you have to go through the menu to select the options such as select a save slot or reload a save game. And here it is A for practice, B for start, and C for load. And then 1, 2, 3 to select 1, 2, 3 on the keyboard to select one of the saves. And at the beginning I didn't like it, but I failed so many times at this game that it became actually quite convenient, and I was wondering if a proper menu was even sought, and at the end, during the playtesting, they found out that the game was too difficult and it would be too frustrating to go through the whole menu again just to select a save slot. And here it's true, it's just 2 buttons, C and 3, because I think the 3 and those 2 are easy to reach by the thumb. Yeah, I didn't like it at the beginning, but now I like it because it's quite an easy and fast way to enter the game. But what I do not like either, it's somehow the copilot voice, or more or less the time it occurs before a curve. And I think it's not well balanced. And sometimes you know way in advance, and maybe too much in advance, that you have a hard curve on the right or on the left. And sometimes you just hear it just before it and you don't have the time to react. And that's it. I also don't like the fact that as soon as you have the fund to buy a new car, you have to. I don't know if I skip it or thing like that, but I think you should be able to capitalize the fund. And when you think it's time to buy a new car, then you buy a new car. Now here you have to, and maybe this is why I don't pass level 13, because I bought the Renault Clio instead of the other model. I forgot which it was, and maybe I should have chosen this one because slower, maybe more maneuverable. The Renault Clio seems to me to have the tendency to overturn. And maybe this is why I have so much difficulty with the skill test. Maybe I'll try it again, and at this point make sure that I don't take the more fastest car, but maybe the more maneuverable one. Well, I'll try. I'll keep you postponed. Overall, although I've got quite frustrated with this one, I think Power Drive Rally is a nice, solid game. It's not the best racer on the system, but it's the best, one of the best racer on the game. Oh, you just sent me an email. Just saw it on my email. But yeah, no, I kept to my audio submission. So yes, that's for Pro Drive Rally. I like the game. I really like it, and it's on my to finish list. Although it's tough as nail, I really think I should invest energy and time in it in order to finish it. I think I will feel great proud of finishing this game. Now, on a more general feedback note, first of all, I'd like to congratulate once again on the show. I really, really like you. Show. And I think you're a nice guy too. Yeah, sorry. I haven't taken any notes and didn't write anything. I just do it on as it comes to me. And yeah, I like the fact that you're not too passionate about it. You are reasonable, and I don't know if I will be able to do it if I do a podcast or even a YouTube channel, things I have thinking about years and never done, started, then dropped it, and restarted. So, I don't know. But anyway, I really think you're doing a great job on the podcast, and this is amazing. And the second point I wanted to mention here is from your last episode, you mentioned the fact that the Redbubble shops was forced to be closed due to Atari. And I still feel outraged, actually. I perfectly understand how you feel about it, because few years back, with the success of our first convention called the Jaguar Connection, because when we started the Retro Gaming Connection Association, we already had 2 Jaguar Connection convention in France. And we keep it that way for a few years. And at a point, we thought, right, okay, now the Jaguar Connection is almost only 30% Atari and 70% rest. So we decided to split the convention into 2 conventions. One called the Retro Gaming Connection for general retro gaming, every system, every platform, computer, arcade, gaming consoles, and we wanted to have the Atari Connection for the retro computing scene, and with 50% Atari. And we almost got sued by Atari. They didn't want. They said us that we could not use their name. We tried, even said, okay, if you want us to make some advertisement for your products and things like that, they just refused. And just 2 weeks before this event, we had to change the name, and we just call it the AC. So, a little note. So when you saying that I am from the Atari Connection, you can't. It is the Retro Gaming Connection. So, I think I know exactly how you feel about Atari's call to ban everything fan-made related to Atari. I really, yeah, empathize with you. I really do. Plus, on a more personal note, I wanted to buy you one t-shirt, kid size, and also adult size for me. The t-shirt with serious games requires 17 buttons and plastic overlays. And I wanted one for my son, because when it comes to my game room, the first console he tried to power down is the Jaguar. And I wanted to make it kind of an homage to you. Yeah, I wanted to make this picture a gift to you. My kids wearing your t-shirt, powering the Jaguar. And as usual, I waited too much, and now your shop is forced to be closed, and yeah, too bad for me. And yeah, I think I still feel outraged, actually. But yeah, what can we do about it? Nothing, I guess. So yeah, I just hope it hasn't cheered your motivation about your podcast, because you're doing really a great job. I really admired you for that, and I really think you are an inspiration for people who want to make some research article and things like that. I read 2 articles this summer about the CDI in the French press, and they were full of mistakes and shortcuts. A few things I learned, but yeah, and I like the fact that you really take the time to deep into the story of each game, and for that, I say, great job, man. Very great job. Keep doing the great job. I don't know if I do other audio submission, and maybe next time I will prepare them a little bit in advance. But yeah, anyway, bye for now, and can't wait to listen to the Power Drive Rally episode. See you. Bye.
Arethius, that was so nice of you. So many kind words. Thank you. I'm honored that you enjoy the show and would take the time to record all this. So I took some notes while listening to your submission, so let's dig in. I don't know if it helps, but I rarely look at the timer while playing Power Drive Rally, and I still stink at it. I look at the timer maybe once per lap each time I cross the starting line, and I definitely notice when it starts flashing, but I can see how it might psych you out, distract you from the difficulty of those skill levels. Navigating through the cones in the spiral, that's the worst part. One time I had completed everything on the track, but couldn't quite get my car properly positioned on the exit, so I was kind of freaking out. The timer was flashing, and I couldn't get my car just right. When the level ended, I didn't know if I had won or lost, but it turns out I did actually get my car on the exit. The game is hard. It takes a lot of practice, and I personally don't like this style of game enough to put the time in. But as you mentioned, all the nice touches, I think the visual flair, the overall presentation, this can keep somebody coming back for more. It kicks my butt, but at least it looks pretty while doing so. You mentioned the lack of a proper menu earlier, and I don't know, it didn't strike me as all that bad. From a user experience perspective, I've done UI and UX design in my line of work, and there's room for improvement here, definitely. You have, for example, the ability to set the number of users, but it only affects one gameplay mode, so logically it should be grouped with that one gameplay mode, right? The menu kind of reminds me of Hover Strike. In Hover Strike, you push A for a new game or B for a saved game. So the interface in Power Drive Rally isn't alone in its approach, among Jaguar games at least. It is pretty fast to work through, you're right about that. It can be frustrating to have to navigate through a menu system when all you want to do is jump back in right away. Cannon Fodder comes to mind. It took a long time to load a saved game and jump back in. What you say about the co-pilot, the timing of the voice being inconsistent, that's something that BTB mentioned in his Jaguar video. I guess I didn't really notice or it didn't bother me, but after watching the Jaguar and coming back to the game, I can certainly see your point, or hear your point. When it comes to choosing the right car, knowing which one to choose, power versus handling and so forth, I would suggest the practice mode for that. I think the game is generous in that you can sample all of the Group 2 or Group 1 cars in practice mode, get a feel for them before you're actually able to buy one or the other. I highly recommend trying that out. I agree that Power Drive Rally is one of the best racing games on the Jaguar. But it's not on my list to ever finish. Like cannon fodder, it might be nice, but it's not going to happen. So, general feedback. I do try to be a nice guy in all things toward everyone, so thank you for that. Regarding Redbubble and Atari SA in general, I understand current Atari wanting to protect their trademarks. Atari SA is built around the Atari intellectual property, and that's about it. That's what they've got. The company licensed out its IP. That's what they do. That's their business model, and they have the legal right to protect those trademarks. That being said, the people most interested in Atari intellectual property, the most likely customers, the enthusiastic community that loves all things Atari, we are their biggest customer base. Why would you want to alienate your biggest, most vocal customers? Reasonably, I think that if Atari had a problem with your Atari Connection event, they could have asked you to include a disclaimer. This event is not sponsored or affiliated with Atari SA. And that could have been the end of it. Let people have an Atari-related gathering. Why not? Open up a booth and sell official Atari-branded merchandise. Maybe that could be payment for using their name. That spreads goodwill. Lawyers do not spread goodwill. Nothing against lawyers, of course, I have lawyer friends, but for goodness sakes, people, you have two options, carrot or stick. Why is Atari choosing to beat its potential customers with sticks rather than offering incentive, building the community, building the enthusiasm? I don't get it. I really don't. Engage with your biggest fans. Don't hunt them down. It definitely would have been heartwarming to see little Nolan wearing one of my t-shirt designs. We have a saying, I don't know if you do, but we have a saying that it's the thought that counts, and I do definitely appreciate the thought. I am going to add more content to my Redbubble store. I've decided not to shut it down altogether. There's a modification of one design and an all-new design ready to go, and I think I'll revise the controller-based designs and get those up there. Those have been pretty popular. None of these run afoul of Atari's intellectual property, not at all. That was always my goal, but I'll be more careful now. It just takes time to set up each item in the store, so I'm not sure exactly when this will happen.
Edit.
How about right now? Link in the show notes.
End of edit.
And finally, Arethius, you mentioned the research that I put into the show, how there's a lot of misinformation mistakes out there related to the CDI or Jaguar or whatever else. And that reminds me of the Atari Panther rumors, how Cybermorph and Trevor McFur and others were originally intended to be Panther games. And before I did the research, I might have believed that, but after really digging in, even talking to people at Atari, I realized that it was not the case, but I'm sure these rumors still persist, still are repeated on YouTube and podcasts and blog posts and stuff. I'm not perfect, I do my best, and it's funny how many times I've come close to recording something incorrect, only to stumble on a piece of information that totally refutes what I had in my notes, just a couple days before I record. There have been so many close calls, I'm sure something inaccurate has slipped through, but I really want this podcast to be as accurate as I can make it, so I do spend a huge amount of time on research. Hey Arethius, thank you so much for the audio submission, for your support, and your kind words. Well, my friends, that is going to be it for Power Drive Rally. On your way out, it's going to be a square left, mid-left, Titan, 140, big jump, over bridge, and then a hairpin right. I hope. Join me next time for Magitech Designs iWar, which will be followed by Flashback, Supercross 3D, another racing game. Is this one my favorite? You'll have to tune in to find out. Or apply Betteridge's law of headlines. And after Supercross, we have Theme Park. So 3D shooter, platformer, racing, and sim. 4 different genres coming up. Should be fun. If you have any feedback you'd like to send in for these upcoming games, any of the 25 games I've covered so far, the Jaguar in general, or the show in general, please send that in, text or audio file, to the email address jaguar@gamebygamepodcast.com. All show information can be found on the web at jaguar.gamebygamepodcast.com. I would like to once again thank the Lost Dragon for his magazine assistance in this episode, Arethius for his research and for providing me with scans of the European box art and manual, and for Roberth for giving Moby Games a comprehensive set of screenshots for Power Drive Rally, and for helping me out with the ending of the game. Much appreciated, gentlemen. Thank you. I've got some story time after the end theme. These are anecdotes that are vaguely related to, but not directly associated with Power Drive Rally, so you can stick around or not. But whichever way you turn as you switch on your headlights and head out, please remember that there is a lot of good to be found out there in this world of ours, even with widely ridiculed video game consoles. So do try to keep an open mind and a joyful heart. Thank you for listening.
And now, story time with Shinto.
The ability to honk your horn in Power Drive Rally and to hold it down as long as you want, that reminded me of, well, a couple little stories. The first, really quickly, I was in the 4th grade. My mom came to pick me up from school for one reason or another, and she brought our dog, whom she left in the car. As we were walking back to the car, we could hear a horn blaring, and it was our dog, ever curious, wanting to see what was going on, standing up in the driver's seat with his 2 front paws in the middle of the steering wheel holding down the horn. As I said, very quick story. The next one is more recent. So, in Beijing, at least the part of Beijing where I was working, there are crosswalks, technically, but pedestrians don't seem to have the right of way. You don't have a crosswalk signal like you have in the States and elsewhere, so you cross when you're reasonably sure you won't get clobbered. Okay, one day, walking to work, I had my camera out. I wanted to capture video of this chaotic process, so I was surreptitiously recording as we walked along the road up to the crosswalk. And I captured an enthusiastic horn honking incident. Now, I don't go to China anymore. My visa's expired. I changed jobs, but I still do try to keep up with the goings-on in the Middle Kingdom through a subscription to News China magazine. And just last month, they ran a story about people trying to preserve ambient sounds. Not just the sounds of nature, but urban sounds, like apparently it was a thing, a bit of a fad, I guess, in parts of China a while back to attach little wooden whistles to pigeons. So when the birds take flight, you hear a distinctive whistling sound. It's not as widespread anymore, as I understand it. So this is one of the sounds that people in the magazine article were trying to preserve. I did actually find an example of this pigeon thing in a YouTube video from last year, link in the show notes. So in that spirit, I present to you the sounds of a typical February morning in Beijing, including about the longest non-dog-related horn honk I've ever heard, along with some commentary in English. Picture yourself walking along around 8:43 a.m., one typical smoggy Beijing morning. Somebody's slightly agitated.
And that was a friendly beat.
Hi, I know you. Okay, there are traffic cones in the game, and I have a traffic cone story. I hesitate to tell you this traffic cone story because I'm not proud of my role in it, but here goes. The year is 1995, springtime. I'm at college. We had just finished our classes for the day, and decided to drive out to the mall or something, probably go to Best Buy. I'm driving, and I'm going the back way through the university to avoid traffic. There's some construction along this back road behind campus, and as I'm driving along, Cert, who is in the back seat, asks me to slow down. Chewie is also in the car, riding shotgun. Why, I ask him. Cert, why do you want me to slow down? Oh, I want to smack one of these traffic cones, knock it over, he says. That sounds reasonable, I guess, so I slow down and veer a little bit closer to the cones along the passenger side of the car so that Cert can slap one of them. And I see him climb halfway through the back window. What are you doing, man? And he comes back in, giggling like no 19-year-old man has a right to, and hauls a traffic cone through the window after him. Chewie's cracking up, Cert's still giggling there in the back seat with his pilfered traffic cone, and I'm ready to slam on the brakes, but Chewie says, Shinto, drive! So I go as fast as my 1.5-liter engine can take us, which is to say, not very. We're driving along, I'm in shock, acutely aware that the entire back of the car is glowing blaze orange. Those cones are highly reflective for a reason, and it was a bright day, clear skies. So we make it to Best Buy, and the other two start getting out of the car, and I say, we can't go in there. We can't leave this traffic cone in the back of my car. Someone will see it. This was a hatchback, and the entirety of the interior was visible from the outside. The interior lit up like 500 orange glow sticks. Oh, it'll be fine. Nobody's going to care. Don't be such a baby, Shinto. No, for once in my college career, I stood firm in the face of my peers. We are not leaving that cone in my car. Fine. Chewie and Cert capitulated, climbed back in, and I drove off. Not really going anywhere in particular, just away from pedestrians, I guess. Then Cert gets an idea in a remote corner of the parking lot. Shinto, stop here. I stop. He gets out of the car with the cone, thank goodness, and then a moment later climbs back in without the cone. And I look out and see that he had placed the cone on top of someone else's car. Some random stranger is going to walk out and see a traffic cone perched on their hood and wonder just how such a thing could happen. And I drove out of there as fast as my 1.5-liter engine could take us, which is to say, not very.